In the last video, I ended with this function, toFloat or null. This function says I'll return a float number from this string, or if I can't do this, I'll return a null. The question mark here means null, and as you know, here we can find out the return type of a function. Float question mark means this function returns a float or null. But the big question is that what's null? In this case, null means the value is unknown. So when I try to extract a float from a string like this function returns 40.20. But when I use this function to extract a number from a string like this function will return null. It means the function is trying to say that the string's value to extract is unknown. When a function returns null, we need a variable that can hold a null value too, because by default in Kotlin, variables cannot hold nulls. For example, a Boolean variable only can hold true or false. By default, it can only hold true or false. It can't hold a null value. Or a byte variable by default can hold any value from -128 to 127. Sometimes we need to be able to hold a null value in a variable. For example, as you see, the function toFloat or null may return a float number or null. So the converted weight variable must be able to hold float numbers and a null value. So if I define the type of this variable as float, I'll get this error, type mismatched. By this error, the function says, hey, I need a container or a variable that can hold float numbers and a null value, because I'll return a float number or a null value. In answer, we must say, okay, I'll change this container or this variable so that it can hold float numbers and a null value. To do so, the only thing is needed is to add a question mark in front of the float. Immediately after doing this, the error disappears. Now the converted weight variable can hold float numbers or null values. If you delete the type and press Ctrl+Shift+P here, you will see that the type of converted weight variable is considered to be nullable float. Nullable float means the variable can hold float numbers or a null value. So we come to the conclusion that data types are not nullable by default. They can not accept nulls. But when we add a question mark in front of a data type, it can accept nulls too. As another example, to hold a null value in a Boolean variable, we must declare the variable like this. For example, is internet connected of type nullable Boolean, not Boolean. Okay, nullable Boolean. And then we can initialize it with null or unknown state, because we've just declared the variable and don't know about the state of the internet connection. So we initialize it with null or unknown state. Later we can check the internet connection and change the state of this variable to true or false. Nullable type is a subtopic of null safety. I'll teach you null safety in details later at the right time.